All right, we're here, 16th day of March. You're listening to the Jack Stockwell radio talk show program here on the stream. But as soon as this noise stops at K-Talk, then I will get the local broadcast at K-Talk up and running. I keep forgetting they put this long lead of music in there. So, anyway, welcome to Global Affairs. Welcome to Global Affairs Unfiltered. Try that again. Welcome to Global Affairs Unfiltered. I'm Jack Stockwell here on the 16th day of March 2026, third week of the war. My goodness, do things ever change from day to day to day to day to day to day to day? And there's so many different things to talk about. It's going to be hard to cram it all into 1 hour this morning. But I'm going to hit several different subjects from, I guess, that many different areas. I don't know if the tower's back up. I haven't been listening. I hope so. The contrast between what the Western news is reporting and what the rest of the world is reporting is, it's just, it's like a funhouse. Just absolutely crazy. What the Western press is printing about how we're winning the war and how the Iranians are on the edge of defeat and about ready to surrender, that their citizens are out in the street begging for the bombings to stop. And then you look at the other side of the story and the videos that are being snuck out of Israel show a totally different story altogether. And then the West is saying, look at all of how the Iranian, the amount of missiles coming in from Iran every day now are getting less and less because of the fact that the West has taken out all of these launch sites, which of course is answered by Arachi. And I like the way he answers these questions. No BS, just straight, no emotion, no excitement, just the way things are from the Iranian point of view. That they're cutting back on the missiles because they don't need so much anymore, because all of the huge amount of missiles that started on day one of this war was designed, of course, to take out all the interceptor stocks that the U.S. and Israel had, which is why they were eventually able to hit every American base, why the two aircraft carriers that have been allegedly hit by missiles, one blamed it on a laundry fire, the other one blamed it on water pumping, have made sure that they turned tail and got way out of the missile range as far as they could. And so I watched the news going back and forth. It's almost like a slow motion tennis game to see who's going to serve the next volley and what's going to take place. And it's just been completely entertaining, while unfortunately the number of American dead continues to increase dramatically. At the two bases in Germany that take care of the American casualties, one of them, of course, as I mentioned last week, has canceled all obstetric and other types of medical care, especially pediatric, so that they have all the rooms available for the American and Israeli casualties that they're taking care of that can't fit into Israeli hospitals. Then on the other side, the American side, there's only a handful of American casualties so far. But when you look at the extensive damage that has occurred to American bases that are located in the Arab world, and then to say that, there's less than 24 injured or dead, it just strains the imagination. So Israel running low on missile interceptors, even the U.S. officials are saying now. Now, the same thing happened last summer in the June war, where there were 3 waves of missiles that came from Iran against Israel. The first one were the slower ones, the drones. try to expose where the anti-missile, the interceptor bases were located. And then the next wave that came in after that were a little bit faster, the cruise type missiles, moving at the speed of airline. And most of them were taken down, as they were intended to be. And then the third wave, of course, were the ballistic missiles, once they had exhausted to some degree the Iron Dome coverage, which, of course, the Iron Dome now has turned out to be more of a cardboard dome. Now, the same thing they did this year, or this time, they learned a lot, as Agrachi said. They learned an awful lot from the war last year. And so now they're bringing out the big guns, the ones that can have as much as a full ton, if not 2 tons, of warheads on them, because most of Israel's defense interceptors are gone. Now, U.S. officials told Semafor, Semafor, that watches these kinds of things, that Israel has informed the United States that it is critically low on ballistic missile interceptors. And Israel entered the current war with interceptor stocks already depleted from last summer's conflict, and Iran's ongoing attacks have accelerated the drain. So Israel Foreign Minister Gideon Saar denied the shortage as recently as yesterday, but consider the scale of the interceptor expenditure. Because we now know that the United States has fired over 150 THAAD interceptors during last year's 12-day war, burning through roughly about a quarter of the inventory at the time. And it's estimated to have fired $2.4 billion worth of Patriot interceptors in just the first 5 days of this conflict. So is Washington, the idea is that they're going to share the additional interceptors with Israel at a cost of defending their own bases. So the officials are insisting that the U.S. stocks remain sufficient. Caroline Leavitt, the White House press secretary, said, we've done all we need to protect our bases and our personnel in the region. She said the U.S. stockpiles are more than enough to achieve Trump's goals, she says, and beyond. David Sachs, who is President Trump's artificial intelligence czar and a prominent voice in Silicon Valley, and private equity circles, used his All In podcast this weekend to publicly urge the administration to seek an exit from the U.S.-Israeli war on Iran. This is reported by Haaretz. They said this is a good time to declare victory and get out, Sachs said, echoing the language the president himself has used in calling the operation an excursion that has already met its goals. So Sachs, who was at one time with war hawks like Senator Graham, and these war hawks who are pushing to expand strikes to Iranian energy infrastructure, and issued a stark warning about the war's trajectory. Graham said, if this war continues for weeks or months, then Israel could be destroyed. He also raised the specter of Israel escalating the war by contemplating the use of a nuclear weapon, which would truly be catastrophic, Sachs said. And that a ceasefire or a negotiated settlement with Iran was the only responsible alternative. The Israeli officials have made no suggestion that nuclear arms deployment is under consideration, consistent with the country's long-standing policy of lying about the possession of nuclear weapons. Sachs also mapped out the specific vulnerabilities he sees driving the worst-case scenarios. He said attacks on Gulf desalination infrastructure would prove catastrophic. I think about 100 million people in the Arabian Peninsula get their water from desalination. It's practically a desert, isn't it? He said, and these desalination plants are easy targets. These are people who never wanted to get out of Iraq and Afghanistan. We would have them over there 20 years more if they had their choice. This is the time to ignore those voices. Now, there was one source that I ran across, it was Friday or Saturday, that intimated that the defense people in Iran said, after Trump said, if you don't, petition for surrender, unconditional surrender, we're going to hit you harder than we have ever hit you before. And one of the sources I came across, allegedly, Agrachi said, you do that, and we will sink the fort. And they certainly have capabilities of doing that now with the new Sajet missile that was just launched yesterday. The reason why Iran has been cutting back on the amount of missiles they've been launching every day isn't because they're running out. It's because they have nearly depleted all of the interceptor stock that the U.S. and Israel Air Force and armies have. Now they're bringing out the big guns as they promised they would do. And, well, got a commercial break at K-Talk, so I'll talk to those of you on the stream. So what they're doing now is bringing out these super weapons. Not only do they fly higher than Mach 5, some of them fly as high as Mach 10 on re-entry, 10 times the speed of sound. 10 times the speed of sound would take an airplane from Los Angeles to New York in about 30 minutes. Wouldn't that be something? Well, the Aegis systems on these destroyers and whatever radar systems are left intact, most of the expensive, very effective radar systems have been destroyed in the Arab states as well as in Israel. What they're designed to do is to track a missile maybe at the speed of Mach 4. They're not designed to track something faster than that because the software of the computers can't work faster than that. Isn't that interesting? They said it's like trying to catch a bullet. And not only, and the traditional missiles that Iran has been firing at Israel they go up, they have an arc, and they come down. And the interceptor program systems that are on the ground in Israel can easily track something that's moving like that. And that's what Iran has been firing at Israel in order to deplete the interceptor stock. Now that stock has been greatly reduced, as I said, they're bringing out the big guns like this new Sajet missile. Now there are others. They have other missiles besides that one that have proven to be very effective, but now that the interceptor stock has been reduced that much, they're bringing out these big guns. And they are just absolutely wreaking the most horrible havoc. Not in Israel, but the American bases as well, and the Arab states like Bahrain, which probably won't exist past another week or so. The UAE, Yemen, Kuwait, where they have allowed American missile bases to launch missiles from at Iran. So Iran sees them as the enemy. And Iran has been taking them out. But the biggest thing is, of course, the closure of the Strait of Hormuz. Now, some ships are coming and going, and especially those that are delivering oil to China and India, because they're a part of BRICS. They have nothing to do with this warfare against Iran. But any oil that would be going to the Western states is sitting there in the Gulf. Now, President Trump is pushing Great Britain to send in their own expeditionary force to protect these ships in and out of the Gulf. But the Brits are smart enough to know that that's a suicide mission, because all of these missiles that Iran has now that lines the shoreline that are hidden in the walls, they're hidden in the desert. This is what Iran has been doing for the last 47 years, is building missiles and hiding them, and building missiles and hiding them, because they knew this day was coming. Now, Alistair Crook's Conflicts Forum has compiled assessments from Israeli commentators and former officials painting a very bleak picture of the war's progress. A former senior IDF intelligence official quoted Yossi Melman in reporting under the headline, "Israel should stop the war," called for an immediate halt, quote, "declare victory, announce all objectives have been achieved, and cease fire, and just end the war that way," end quote. You know, it's like two guys fighting each other on the street corner, and one is thoroughly beating the other one. And the one that's getting beat up finally gets back up on his feet, declares victory, and walks away. Now, analyst Eli Levita, who's the former deputy director of the Israeli Atomic Energy Commission, said regime change in Iran now seems imaginary. Well, of course, 90% of the country comes out in the streets at night supporting and defending the current government. It didn't turn against the government like President Trump was told it was going to do. Analyst Ben Caspit, reporting under the headline, "Iran Not Blinking," that Israel and the United States are already tamping down expectations, with Netanyahu quietly dropping regime change language and constructing what observers describe as an alibi for the war's failure to achieve its stated aims. This is from the Israeli press. He's preparing an alibi for himself so that the day after the war he can claim that Israel had done everything to pave the way for the overthrow of the regime, but the Iranians themselves were unable to do so. So it certainly wasn't the fault of the Western efforts to achieve a regime change when the people themselves did not want it. Well, President Trump lashed out on Truth Social after the Wall Street Journal reported that 5 KC-135 air refueling tankers were damaged by an Iranian missile strike at Prince Sultan Air Base in Saudi Arabia. Trump called the coverage fake news, saying 4 of the 5 aircraft suffered minimal damage and are back in service, with the 5th returning shortly. He said the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal and other low-life papers, as he called them, and the media actually want us to lose the war, he said. The Wall Street Journal reports the total number of Air Force refueling aircraft damaged or destroyed to at least 7, following what was reportedly a mid-air collision on March 12th that downed 1 KC-135 and killed all 6 crew members, which we were told it crashed. Well, they don't crash in the air. They get shot down. And the evidence that the KC-135 refueling jet was shot out of the air by an Iranian missile is overwhelming now. But of course, the West is not going to admit that. Iran's ambassador to Mexico, Pasadena, called on the Mexican president Claudia Sheinbaum's government, I think it was Thursday, to formally condemn the U.S. strikes on Tehran, warning that an American victory could embolden Washington to move against other countries in its own hemisphere. He said if the U.S. wins something in Iran, it will not be difficult for them to try to win in Cuba or even Mexico. Look at how these international people are talking. I don't know, just amazing. Anyway, with global attention completely on Iran, Gaza's food situation, which had been seen somewhat submoderate, although insufficient under the October ceasefire, is deteriorating again. Gaza residents are facing rising food prices and worsening shortages as the U.S.-Israeli war on Iran disrupts their already fragile food lines with restricted crossings. Israel closed Gaza's crossings on February 28th, the day this offensive began, halting humanitarian access entirely. The Israeli authorities later reopened the Kerem Abu Salem crossing for gradual entry of aid. But the baseline was already grim when that started. The conditions now have worsened even further. The World Food Program has warned that Gaza's fragile gains could quickly unravel if access is not sustained, and that without reliable humanitarian corridors, the agency could be forced to slash food rations even further. Iran's ambassador to China, Ramani Fazli, gave an extensive interview to China's Observer Network this week, offering Tehran's public accounting of the war and its diplomatic consequences. And on the question of future negotiations, Fazli said categorically, "We will never trust the United States again. We will not and will not seek to negotiate with the United States now or in the future." And then he cited 3 successive American betrayals: the unilateral withdrawal from the JCPOA, the Israeli strikes that aborted a near-complete agreement during last year's 12-day war, and the current offensive, which he said that came the day after Oman's foreign minister publicly predicted that a deal was imminent. He said the Americans did not intend to negotiate from the beginning, and for them, negotiation and dialogue is just a big scam and a big lie. Fazli said the Iranian people have responded to the war and to the killing of Supreme Leader Khamenei with a resolve that has surprised Washington to their last corridors. He said Trump declared that he could make Iran surrender in a day or two. Now is the 7th day, and we are defending with all our strength. He described the crowds gathering in the streets of the cities of Iran with 2 chants: fight until victory and revenge, because they're going to mourn the murder of Khamenei for 40 days. Now, Larijani, you hear a lot from Megrahi and Larijani and Marani, the 3 major voices coming out of Iran. Larijani said this: "I've heard that the remaining members of Epstein's network have devised a conspiracy to create an incident similar to 9/11 and blame Iran for it." Ali Larijani, head of Iran's Supreme National Security Council, wrote on X. He said this: "Iran fundamentally opposes such terrorist schemes and has no war with the American people." Mohsen Rezai, a retired major general and former commander of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, reiterated Tehran's demands for compensation for war damage and a U.S. withdrawal from the region. In an interview on SNN TV News Saturday, he said this: "The end of the war is in our hands, and we look to the end of the war when we first recover all our losses from America. Secondly, we must achieve 100% guarantee for the future, which is not possible without America's withdrawal from the Persian Gulf. Therefore, the second condition is America's withdrawal from the Persian Gulf." This SNN TV website, currently blocked in this country, is an Iranian state-run semi-official news agency and website associated with a part of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard. Now, you can get this information from RT, which is not blocked here. And RT quotes them as saying, the presence of the U.S. in the Persian Gulf has been the main cause of insecurity over the past 50 years. Since 1982, the United States has been involved in numerous wars and conflicts in the Southwest Asia region, including Lebanon, Libya, Iraq, Afghanistan, Sudan, and Syria, with Iraq and Afghanistan being attacked at least twice. Now, an interesting member of parliament in Iran, senior member of parliament, Ebrahim Azizi, who's head of the National Security Commission of the Iranian parliament, posted on X on March 14 that Ukraine, the Ukraine, is now a legitimate target for retaliation by Iran because the Ukraine has given drone support to the Israeli regime. Failed Ukraine has effectively become involved in the war, and under Article 50, I'm quoting from Iran, quoting Article 51 of the United Nations Charter, has turned its entire territory into a legitimate target for Iran. Ukraine responded within hours of this announcement, quote, Ukraine's foreign ministry called the threat absurd, and in a statement from spokesperson to the media reporting on Kyiv Independent, the Iranian regime has been supporting the murder of Ukrainians for years by directly sharing drones and technology for Russian aggression against the Ukraine. It's not funny. I don't mean to imply in any moment or with anything that I'm saying that this is at all funny. It's just interesting how these things can expand into greater and greater territory now with Iran threatening Ukraine. So we're now entering the third week of this war against Iran. This is an unprovoked war of aggression that has been stated in the meantime, even by former Western leaders and diplomats. Remember, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, Kane, warned or at least told Trump, don't do this. His chairman of the Joint Chiefs said, don't do this, meaning the attack. A year ago, this month, Tulsi Gabbard said, the best intelligence we have, Iran is not pursuing a nuclear weapon. And President Trump said, I don't care what she says. When asked a month ago on one of the national news forums, where do you, President Trump, gather all the information to make the decisions that you're making? And remember what he said? I go with my gut. If it feels like something I should do, I do it. Is that what someone who is in control of the second largest nuclear force on the planet should be acting by? What happened to international law? What happened with congressional restraints about war activity on the part of the executive branch of government? The goal of regime change in Iran clearly has not been accomplished, and there is no victory in sight. Even the German TV, I noticed a report Saturday saying that Trump obviously totally miscalculated the situation. And this, however, was completely unnecessary because there was a classified national intelligence report in the United States published a week before the 28th of February, in which they stated in that estimate, even a large-scale assault will not lead to regime change in Iran, and that the opposition would take power would be very unlikely. Well, why did Trump do this anyway? Well, now it seems that he is even saying that, do you see, now he's passing the buck, and I think you've seen this, because now he's saying that he was convinced to do this by four people: Hegseth, Rubio, Witkoff, and Kushner. Hegseth, an avowed Zionist warmonger; Rubio, an avowed Zionist warmonger running for president; and Witkoff and Kushner, real estate salespeople. And now he's saying, because of what they had to say, I made the attack. And in particular, when Rubio went on the record to basically explain that since they knew that Israel was about to attack and that this would lead to a counterattack from Iran, they had no choice but a preemptive attack on Iran, which is completely strange logic. But that's what he says. And so what is the situation? I mean, we're in a complete strategic mess as a result. I mean, if you just review the events since the beginning of this year, on January 7th, President Trump had declared in an interview with the New York Times that he did not need international law, as I was just saying. So why did President Trump do this anyway? Well, when the president of this country is not restrained by international law, nor the dictates of Article 1, Section 8, Paragraph 17 of the U.S. Constitution, and both parties in the House let him do what he wants to do, the Republicans hoping he wins, so the Republicans look good for a war victory, the Democrats hoping he loses, so the Democrats can clean up in the midterms. And then subsequent to his comments about he doesn't give a damn about international law, he doesn't need it, then you had the kidnapping of the elected head of state in Venezuela, Maduro, and more recently the assassination of the supreme leader of Iran, who at the same time not only was the leader of Iran, but also the head of the Shiites worldwide. So this is clearly a new phase, because the targeted eliminations, be it through kidnappings or be it through assassination of elected leaders of state, clearly is a sign of a plunge into lawlessness, where the question of this, where it's all going to end, certainly is worrying a lot of people, which is why there's talk of a false flag attack on the United States by Iran. Just as the same thing that happened 26 years ago, warning of an attack on the United States by Iraq. Now, as the military campaign apparently is not going well, despite what the White House is saying, and there are many reports from knowledgeable scientists like Ted Postel and Ray McGovern, Scott Ritter, McGregor, and many others who describe in great detail that the military operation is not going as planned. But naturally, the big danger now is that this conflict can escalate. And how can it escalate? The interceptor stock is being greatly depleted. The U.S. is taking interceptor stock from Japan and from South Korea that's got them scared to death. I saw a report the other day that China has surrounded Taiwan. Very little coverage of that in the West. In fact, that was Eastern coverage. The West didn't say anything about that. Well, all this stuff is going on behind the scenes. And so here you have, there was this absolutely shocking article by one person with the name of Helman Ullman, who's an advisor in the Atlantic Council, which is pretty much an official position, who wrote an article in the paper The Hill, which is distributed to Congress every day, to every congressman, to every senator. And there he wrote that any attempt for strategic bombing never resulted in the desired goal. He said it didn't happen in Vietnam. It didn't happen in Afghanistan. It did not happen in Iraq. and that there's only one example in history where strategic bombing actually worked: Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And therefore, the potential use of a nuclear weapon to accomplish that goal would be within the options that are available. Now, as the military campaign apparently is not going well, words and comments from people like Ted Postel and McGovern, I mean, this is extremely shocking, because we know that Israel is in possession of nuclear weapons. And even if it never admitted it and never joined the Non-Proliferation Treaty, and famously, John F. Kennedy, in the context of the Cuban Missile Crisis, basically said one should make sure one never brings a nuclear-owning power into a position where they have either the choice of humiliation and defeat or the use of a nuclear weapon. And that, frankly, is what Israel is facing right now: humiliation and defeat. Are they prepared to use a nuke? Now, this is imminent danger. And this is why, despite the fact that the public opinion clearly is shifting, for example, the foreign minister of Oman, who was the chief negotiator with Iran and the United States in the negotiations in Geneva on the 26th, that they had negotiated in Geneva on the 27th, went to the United States and briefed President Trump, saying that major breakthroughs had been accomplished. President Trump was told 2 days before the attack started that Iran had already agreed to massively reduce or downgrade its enriched uranium, and that he was very confident that a solution could be reached. And that was basically now turning out for the second time to be the cover story for launching the attack with all the Israeli input in the background. This Oman foreign minister, in the meantime, put out a statement saying that this war is an illegal war and that it completely violates international law and that one has to rethink the entire security structure of the Middle East. Now, we know that the Iranians are already rethinking the entire security structure, because they said the missiles aren't going to stop till the U.S. is out of the Persian Gulf. Now, I think we're kind of in a rather dangerous moment of history. The additional element is the economic consequences of this war, following the blocking of the Strait of Hormuz. The oil price going through the roof. Naturally, this is leading to enormous consequences for millions of households who have enormous problems with their livelihood as a result. But it could also be the final blow to an already very fragile financial system. Now, I'm going to put a commercial in here for a moment for what I do in my clinic. Because of the fact that food prices are going up, someone pointed out to me the other day that a thing that they commonly buy for their family is already $1 more expensive than it was 2 weeks ago. I've heard reports of some places, gas stations in California, already at $8 a gallon, $6 everywhere else. That I'm going to keep my half off special going in my clinic. I was going to take it back to its original price, but I've got people scheduled all this week who want to take advantage of the half off. I'm going to keep the half off going, because I know things are getting expensive, and they're going to get more expensive. And people might continue to put up with their physical pain and suffering as a result when they don't have to. If you'd like to, for those of you on the stream, and thank you for being there, K-Talk's on a commercial again, and I'll repeat this again as soon as the commercial's over, but I've got this one half special continuing. You'd have to schedule it through the office, 801-523-1890. 801-523-1890. That'll get you in the office for at least a half-hour appointment so we can sit and talk about your problems. If it turns out it's something outside of my scope of practice, it won't cost you anything, and we'll still be friends. If it looks like it's something we can help you with, you'll be scheduled at that time for me to take care of you. So don't worry one way or the other. Now, as I was saying, we're kind of in an incredibly dangerous moment in history. The blocking of the Strait of Hormuz, there's enough limitations, especially for Western ships, and the threats of them being destroyed in the strait. The narrowest part of the strait, it averages around 50 to 60 kilometers wide. The narrowest portion, I think they said, is around 30, 31 kilometers, which is only, barely 25 miles. I am broadcasting right now from Draper, Utah, where 25 miles would take you down to Provo, or north up to Ogden, or maybe even shorter than that. That's how narrow that passageway is. And the banks of on the eastern side, the banks are loaded with all these anti-ship missiles. This is why Lloyd's of London has canceled insurance for ships going through there, of ships that represent Western interests. They're still insuring ships going to China. Now, before that news break, or that commercial break came on to K-Talk, I was talking about the half-off special. Because money is going to get tighter, the cost of living is going to get more expensive, I'm continuing this half-off special in my clinic for new patients. I've already had some people address me on that very issue. But yes, I will continue to it was just it was a December special. Here we are halfway through March. Because of the demand for it, I will continue to do it. All right. You'd call 801-523-1890 to make an appointment. All right. Now, I was talking about to the people on the stream during that commercial break, the natural results. What will take place in your life today that is not in one way directly or indirectly related to the cost of petroleum? Obviously, driving your car to work. And what about the electricity? Where is the electricity coming from? Is it coming from coal burning plants? Is it coming from nuclear energy plants? Is it coming from natural gas plants? The food that you're going to eat today, how did it end up in the grocery store? The dentist's office you're going to visit today, how did their supplies get to that dental office? Well, obviously it was trucked in. I know I'm just preaching to the choir here. Try to find something that's very important to your lifestyle today that isn't based on petroleum. And then on top of that, we've got a very tenuous financial system because more and more countries now are moving to the yuan to settle their debts between countries. The purchase of oil being paid in yuans, not the petrodollar. And if the petrodollar doesn't survive, and given the fragility of the Western financial system with what I'm saying, it could lead to a repetition of that systemic crisis like 2008. And so just this time, the so-called tools of the central banking system has been completely used up. So what's the solution? There are all kinds of scenarios now saying how the world's going to look after this war is over. That Israel will have greater Israel in the Middle East and be the strongest military power the Middle East has ever seen. That Europe will eventually have got its independence, rearming Europe in an unprecedented militarization with the German army being the strongest army in Europe and the United States controlling the entire Western Hemisphere and the Indo-Pacific. That is how Western news sources is describing what will happen when this war is over. Well, I don't think any of those things are going to happen quite that way. I think we're in an unprecedented, epical change, because what is underlying all the hotspots, Ukraine, Iran, Venezuela, Cuba, the new war between Afghanistan and Pakistan, there is in each case a specific reason. But the underlying dynamic is the fact that the old order, the old world order, is clearly disintegrating. And the global majority, which represents 85% of the people on this planet, are intended to create a much more just world order based on BRICS and the Shanghai Cooperation Organization and similar organizations. And there are forces in the West who absolutely want to prevent such an order from coming into being. So, given the fact that this strategic situation has many, many complicating elements, this was the purpose of the International Peace Coalition from the very beginning, and the Schiller Institute, and what they were trying to do from the outbreak of the special military operation in the Ukraine, that they had started this complete campaign for a complete change in the paradigm. And they've had several conferences since, hosting leaders from all around the planet who are of a similar faith and belief and intent that would end up moving away from American and Western hegemony into a collective among themselves where sovereignty will be completely observed and supported among themselves. But if we stay with these geopolitical games, the danger that what happened with geopolitics 2 times in the 20th century, World War I, World War II, could be repeated, a third World War. And given the fact that we now have thermonuclear weapons, and the likelihood that these weapons would be used in such a global war being almost 100% certain, could mean the end of civilization. And we have to get together and find a solution based on reason, a new paradigm which allows the survival of civilizations. Now, in the meantime, a high-ranking Ayatollah from Iran has appealed to the Pope, basically in the same spirit. Obviously, there isn't just one Ayatollah. There's more than one Ayatollah. And this very high-ranking Ayatollah, and I had his name in my notes here a few minutes ago. Anyway, he's referring to the Pope as a morally outstanding figure who is maybe the last person who can intervene to avoid a terrible catastrophe of humanity. And so he is appealing to the Pope to get involved, to try to calm the situation down before it gets completely out of hand. Now, there is rumors out there that Netanyahu's dead, along with Ben-Gvir and several others. There's all of these AI videos of Netanyahu on X and other places that are obvious AI. And then the last one that the Western media released, obvious AI, because it looks like Netanyahu lost 40 pounds. What is Israel planning to do to prevent their annihilation? And of course, it's got the ecumenicals all upset, because what's happening isn't following the program that those who seem to have some monopoly on the interpretation of Revelation of St. John the Divine isn't exactly following the script, which I find entertaining. I mean, there's crazies on both sides of the fence. Anyway, we're coming up here towards the end of the program. I still, I'm the eternal optimist. I may not sound it. I may sound very cynical and very worrisome with my presentation here at K-Talk and on the stream this morning. But this is what the Oasis Peace Plan is all about. The peace plan promoting to do good through development, the development of one another's nations. And this is what the BRICS group is all about. This is how the BRICS group came together to create a new economic order. It's still in development. There's still problems. But I hold out for the best. So tomorrow I'll pick up where I left off today. Looks like we're done at K-Talk. I will end that transmission. For those of you who are on the stream, I appreciate your being a part of the program, the listenership. You can always make comments if you need me to address a particular subject or something you want. You can always include comments in there. I'll be glad to address them. So until tomorrow, keep your wits about you. And I'm very much in favor of peace and not war. Make peace, not war. And I still believe the best for the future of mankind. I'll see you all.